The silk of my cousin Celeste's wedding dress probably cost more than everything I owned. A fact she made sure the entire bridal party knew. As we stood in the opulent, mirror-walled suite of the Ritz, Carlton in Naples, Florida, the air thick with the cloying scent of gardenias and privilege. I was 20, and the honor of being a bridesmaid felt like a sentence. The dress Celeste had chosen for us was a garish shade of coral, cut for someone with a different body, a different life. And as I stood there, feeling the cheap polyester scratch my skin, my mother, Linda, swooped in, her eyes critical lasers. She didn't look at my face, only at the ill-fitting garment. Her mouth a thin, disapproving line. "For God's sake, Leah," she hissed, loud enough for my aunts and the other bridesmaids to hear. "You couldn't have stood up straighter. You look like you're wearing a sack. Celeste spent a fortune on these. And you're making it look like a costume from a thrift store." A titter ran through the room. My face burned. It's a little tight in the shoulders," I managed to whisper, which was a mistake. "The shoulders," Celeste drawled, not looking up from her own perfect reflection. "Leah, the problem isn't the shoulders, it's the posture. It's the aura. You just don't have the bearing for nice things. Some people are meant for uniforms, servants, waitresses, simple, practical things, not silk and design." My mother nodded in solemn agreement, placing a consoling hand on Celeste's arm. "She's right, honey, you've always been more utilitarian. I've made my peace with it. You'll find some simple job. Marry a simple man. And that will be that. Dreaming of more just leads to this embarrassment." The word, embarrassment, hung in the perfumed air, a verdict, in that moment, surrounded by mirrors that reflected a version of myself I despised. I felt something break inside. A final, silent snap. The dream I had clutched in the dark, of wearing a uniform of authority, of serving something greater than their shallow world, was mocked as the destiny of a servant. My ambition was a joke. My future a pre-written script of mediocrity. I didn't cry then. I just stood there, a mannequin of shame, until the attention shifted back to the bride. But later, locked in a marble bathroom the size of my bedroom back home, I slid down the door and wept. Silent, heaving sobs that stole my breath. I cried for the girl who was never enough, for the mother who saw her as a flawed accessory, for the dream that felt stupid and naive under the glare of their reality. When the tears were spent, a cold, clear certainty washed over me, as chilling and bracing as ice water. I would leave. I would vanish from this glittering coast and their suffocating narrative. And I would build a life so formidable, so anchored in genuine power and respect, that the very word, uniform, would become my crown, and one day, they would see it, and they would understand that they had not misjudged a dress, but had entirely misjudged a soul. I didn't wait for the reception. During the ceremony, as Celeste said her vows in a cathedral of excess, I slipped out a side door, the coral dress stuffed in a gift shop bag. I walked to the bus station in my plain clothes, bought a one-way ticket with the last of my tip money from my diner job, and chose a city at random from the departures board. Atlanta, Georgia. The bus ride was a blur of aching grief and numb resolve. I arrived in Atlanta at dawn, the skyline a jagged promise of anonymity. My first home was a hostel near the airport, a place of bunk beds and transient despair. I got a job the next day as a night shift cleaner in a downtown skyscraper, pushing a heavy cart through empty, echoing corporate halls. The pay was misery, the loneliness absolute. I rented a closet-sized room in a boarding house, my world reduced to the smell of industrial cleaner and the constant hum of I-85. By day, I tried to sleep through the noise. By night, I scrubbed toilets and vacuumed miles of carpet. And in the stolen hour before dawn, I studied. I had bookmarked the websites for the Federal Air Marshal Service and the Diplomatic Security Service. My new scripture. I trained my body in the deserted, pre-dawn parking deck of the building I cleaned, running up and down the concrete ramps until my legs shook. The hunger was a constant companion, for decent food, for sleep, for a kind word. But I fed only the hunger for progress. The doubt was a snarling beast in the quiet moments, whispering my mother's words. Utilitarian. Simple job embarrassment. But I learned to answer it with another set of stairs, another chapter of federal law. After a year of this grinding existence, I moved again. Drawn north to the center of American power, Washington, D.C. I found a basement apartment in a row house in a transitioning neighborhood, its single window looking up at passing feet. My first real step was a job as a security screener at Union Station. The uniform was polyester and ill-fitting, a cruel echo of the bridesmaid's dress, but it was a foot in the door of the transportation security world. I stood for hours, waving a wand, my mind drilling aviation security protocols and behavioral detection principles. I enrolled in online criminal justice courses, paying in painful, scraped together installments. I lived on instant noodles, peanut butter, and a fierce, solitary determination. The loneliness was an ocean. I learned to swim in it. Holidays were spent in the empty station, trading shifts for double pay. The silence of my apartment on Christmas morning was a physical weight. But I would open my textbook. The words a lifeline. My life became a project, with a single deliverable transformation. After 2 years, I earned my bachelor's degree. The graduation notice came in the mail. I filed it away. It was a milestone, not a celebration. I leveraged the TSA job to apply for a position as an analyst with the Transportation Security Administration's Intelligence Division. It was a desk job, parsing threat reports, but it came with a higher clearance and a glimpse into the machinery of national security. I performed with flawless, quiet dedication. My analyses were sharp, my focus absolute. My director, a sharp-eyed woman named Sharon, took notice. She began mentoring me, pushing me toward more complex projects. "You have a mind for patterns, Leah," she said one day. "And a temperament that doesn't quit." Ever thought about the service? She meant the U.S. Diplomatic Security Service, the federal law enforcement arm of the State Department. It was the dream, the ultimate uniform, combining law enforcement, diplomacy, and global protection. It became my singular focus. I studied for the Foreign Service Officer test with a zeal that bordered on obsession. I trained for the grueling physical fitness tests, my body hardening into an instrument of readiness. The application process was a year-long gauntlet of written exams, oral assessments, polygraphs, and medical evaluations that probed every corner of my isolated existence. When asked about family estrangement, I was calm. "My focus is on service to my country, sir." My personal history has instilled in me a deep resilience and self-reliance that I believe are assets in this field. The call came on a rainy Thursday, a formal voice congratulating me on my acceptance as a diplomatic security special agent candidate. I was in my kitchen, and my legs gave way. I sank to the floor, phone pressed to my ear, and cried silent, shuddering tears of a pain I didn't know I was still carrying. The first mountain was scaled. The training at the federal law enforcement training centers in Georgia was the most physically and mentally demanding experience of my life. It was a storm of firearms proficiency, tactical driving, protective operations, counterterrorism, and diplomatic law. I embraced every second of the pain, the exhaustion, the pressure, because here, the uniform I would earn was not a costume of servitude, but a symbol of global authority and trust. Graduation day, standing in my new DSS dress uniform, the dark suit, the distinctive pin, the air of solemn purpose. I felt the final ghost of the girl in the coral dress dissipate, like mist in the sun. I was now Special Agent Lee Vance, My first posting was to the Regional Security Office at a U.S. embassy in a quiet European capital. My world expanded from the basement in D.C. to the global stage. I investigated passport fraud, protected visiting dignitaries, and advised on security for diplomatic facilities. I was calm, capable, and respected. I learned languages, negotiated with foreign police, and built a reputation for unflappable competence. I saved my money, invested wisely, and bought a small apartment back in D.C. for my home leaves. A serene space that reflected the order and purpose I had created. I made a few deep friendships within the tight-knit DSS community, bonds forged in shared sacrifice and understanding. But my past remained a closed book. Years passed. I was promoted, given more responsibility, selected for protective details for high-ranking officials. My career was my life, and it was a rich, fulfilling one. The uniform was my skin. My identity was my badge. And then the rotation notice came. I was being assigned as the Assistant Regional Security Officer, in charge at the U.S. Consulate in Miami, Florida, just a 2-hour drive from the Ritz-Carlton in Naples. The symmetry was almost laughable. A few months into my Miami posting, a high-profile international banking summit was scheduled, attracting CEOs, financiers, and their families from across the globe. My office was tasked with coordinating personal security for several of the attending American VIPs. One of the names on the list, a mid-level executive from a New York investment firm, had a +1 for social events. His wife, Celeste, my cousin, and a note attached indicated the firm had requested a brief courtesy meeting for their executive team with consulate economic officers to discuss overseas investment climates. A standard diplomatic nicety, the meeting was scheduled in one of the consulate's secure conference rooms. My role was to oversee the security sweep beforehand and be present as the senior DSS representative to ensure the safety and integrity of the discussion. The day arrived. I wore my standard DSS attire, a tailored, authoritative pantsuit, my badge clipped to my belt, my posture one of alert command. I stood in the corridor as the visitors were processed through security. I saw them before they saw me. Celeste, older, harder around the eyes, clinging to her husband's arm. Dressed in the same aggressive luxury. Her husband, a man with the polished blandness of his profession, was chatting nervously with his boss, the firm's senior vice president. A man named Robert, who I knew from my briefing, was deeply concerned about his personal safety profile abroad. They were cleared and escorted towards the conference room. As they approached, I turned from reviewing a security monitor with a Marine security guard, my profile sharp against the official seal of the United States on the wall. Celeste's gaze swept past me, then snapped back, her eyes widening in a slow, disbelieving cascade of confusion and dawning horror. She saw the badge first, then my face, then the absolute, unquestionable authority of my position in this most secure of American spaces. Her mouth fell open, no sound came out. Her husband, sensing her freeze, followed her gaze. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, using the deferential term for any law enforcement. Before I could answer, Robert, the SVP, stepped forward, his face breaking into a relieved, ingratiating smile. "You must be Assistant Regional Security, Officer Vance. Robert Ellington, we spoke on the phone. Thank you so much for your time, and for overseeing our security here today. It's a real weight off my mind." He extended his hand, which I shook with a firm, professional grip. "My pleasure, Mr. Ellington. Your safety and the security of our diplomatic premises are our top priorities." My voice was calm, cool, carrying the full weight of the U.S. government. I saw the understanding hit Celeste like a freight train. The officer her husband had deferentially addressed was not just a guard. I was the superior her husband's boss was thanking. I was the authority in the room, the one whose permission and oversight were required for their very presence in this secure space. The woman she had deemed fit only for a servant's uniform was now wearing the ultimate uniform of American diplomatic power. And I was, functionally, her boss's superior in this context. The color drained from her face, leaving a stark mask of shock. Her carefully constructed world of social climbing and material worth crumbled to dust in the face of real, earned authority. Her eyes filled with a panic-stricken, awe-stricken shame. She looked from me to her husband's confused face, to her boss's respectful demeanor, and she understood the colossal, irreparable scale of her error. She didn't cry, she just seemed to shrink, to diminish, right there in the hallway, becoming the insignificant one. I gave a slight, professional nod to the group. The conference room is ready for you. The economic officer will be right in. Please proceed. My tone held no malice, no triumph, only the calm efficiency of duty. As they filed past, Celeste couldn't meet my eyes. She stared at the floor, her earlier aura utterly extinguished. I turned back to the Marine, resuming our conversation as if nothing had happened. Because to me, in the life I had built, it hadn't. The reckoning was complete, and it had required not a single word of reproach, only the silent, towering fact of my presence in the seat of power I had earned. Later, standing at my office window, overlooking the Miami skyline, the turquoise water beyond, I felt a profound and settling peace. The journey from the mocked bridesmaid to the federal agent was the only revenge I ever needed. A revenge built not on hatred, but on self-respect, not on confrontation, but on quiet, relentless becoming. They had seen the costume, and they had laughed. But I had gone out and forged the steel, earned the badge, and claimed the authority. And in doing so, I had not only proven them wrong, I had transcended their very world, leaving them far below, staring up at a height they could never comprehend. And in that quiet altitude, I found the ultimate victory of freedom so complete, it no longer required their acknowledgement at all.